What's up, boys and girls? Today, I want to talk about decentralized exchanges, a topic that has been on my mind for a while. The reason being is that I believe that 2018 will be the year where regulations hammer down on cryptocurrencies and crypto trading. So first of all, disclosure, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just a dude in a room in San Francisco loving the crypto and dropping some knowledge. So let's get into this. What is a centralized exchange? Well, a cryptocurrency exchange platform is a place where you can trade fiat money for cryptocurrencies, or you can trade cryptocurrencies for another cryptocurrency. You might have heard of Binance, you might have heard of Coinbase, might have heard of KuCoin. All these are centralized exchanges. The point of this video is that because of all these regulations, I want to know, and I'm sure you want to know because you're watching this video, what are alternatives to centralized exchanges? And are decentralized exchanges worth it? You know? So let's dive right into this. Centralized exchanges. The golden word in crypto is liquidity. Liquidity. Higher liquidity means more orders. Binance, for example, has 40,000 transactions per second. Two reasons for that. One, they have more users. They have a lot of users, millions of users. And what that means is that you are more likely to have someone willing to buy the asset you are trying to sell, right? The second reason why there are 40,000 transactions per second happening on Binance is that orders happen off chain, off the blockchain. So you might not know, or you might already know this, but in order to verify a transaction on the blockchain, a miner has to mine it, right? And this depends on the blockchain, but takes a while on Bitcoin and takes a little less time on Ethereum, but you're gonna have to check the hash rate. Anyways, this is out of the scope of this video. Another pro of centralized exchanges is that they protect uninformed users from scams. And that is really important, because there are, I don't know, thousands of coins out there, a lot of shit coins. So Binance will only list a coin after they have reviewed the coin. So they'll look into the team, they'll look into the GitHub, they'll look into the activity and also the timeline for the crypto and what are their plans. So that's super interesting because you know that once a coin is listed on Binance, it is probably somewhat, I use the term vaguely, somewhat legit. Another thing is that usually decentralized exchanges work with governments to comply with regulations. And I've stated it, and I'm going to state it again, 2018 is the year of regulations. If we look at the latest statement from the SEC that they have released on March 7th, so pretty recently, they claim, that many platforms refer to themselves as exchanges, which can give the misimpression to investors that they are regulated or meet the regulatory standards of a national securities exchange. Although some of these platforms claim to use strict standards to pick only high quality digital assets to trade, so like I said about Binance, the SEC does not review these standards or the digital assets that the platforms select, and the so-called standards should not be equated to the listing standards of national securities exchanges. So, this is major FUD, no bueno. Binance does work with all these regulators and governments, but technology moves so fast that it is freaking hard for governments to actually understand what is going on. And, Binance is a business. They're trying to acquire as many customers as they can. And that is their goal. So, following regulations is definitely good, especially in 2018. Now, what are the cons of centralized exchanges? Centralized exchanges represent a honeypot of all this money on this one single point of failure. You've heard of the Mt. Gox hacks. You've heard of Binance potentially being hacked. This is like a treasure chest for all these hackers. That is definitely a con. Now, on top of that, the reason why I'm saying that is that on centralized exchanges, you have no control over your private keys. So, technically speaking, the exchange itself is managing your money for you, even though you're requesting the trades. That is why another huge tip that I have to give anyone is buy a hardware wallet and keep your money off these exchanges. Okay? Unless you're day trading, which is fine. I don't day trade. That's not my thing. I will put a link down here to my favorite hardware wallet, which is the Nano S Ledger. It's pretty amazing. So another thing that you have to do, which is, can actually lead to disastrous situations, is that you manually have to enter your keys in the UI to receive and send crypto assets. The issue with that is that there have been stories, and I don't think I know anyone that has made that mistake, but you can send Ethereum to the wrong wallet and then you would actually lose all your money. So that is definitely a con of centralized exchanges. Let's go right into the centralized exchanges. Now, obviously the great thing about decentralized exchanges is that there is no KYC. KYC is know your customer. So on Coinbase, when you sign up, they actually require a form of identity, right? They validate that you are that person that is trading. Then you have to either enter a credit card number or a checking account. They want to know their customers. And the reason why is that they can actually be required to hand off that information. And this has happened with the IRS this year, where the IRS requested all user accounts for investors that have more than $15,000 on Coinbase. So you have no privacy on centralized exchanges, but you do on decentralized exchanges because there is no signing up for anything. There is no UI. What is going on is that it is a peer-to-peer exchange, right? So think of like when you download a torrent or you put media up and you're sharing it, and pretty much peer-to-peer. You can install a VPN on your computer and nobody will know. So that's the advantage of the decentralized exchange. Another one is that decentralized exchanges leverage smart contracts. So you're actually your funds are only taken out once it is confirmed through a smart contract that both parties have met the requirements for the trade. So let's move to the cons of decentralized exchanges. The order books are actually, there's not a centralized order book like in Binance, where Binance will take all the orders and then match buyers with sellers. That does not happen on decentralized exchanges. It's P2P, one-to-one, right? So it's on the blockchain. When a transaction gets confirmed, the smart contract confirms it. It has to be confirmed on the blockchain, which is much, much slower. To add to that, if you want to cancel, you want to modify, or you want to hoist orders, then the issue is that it's going to cost you gas on the Ethereum blockchain, right? So you better be sure that you really want this to happen. I mentioned this before, there's only 2% of volume compared to Binance, which is, really, really low. So the liquidity is not as good. And of course, another thing I'd like to mention is that people, they lose their private keys. And you better know what you're doing if you're on a decentralized exchange, because if something happens, you lose your private key, or a transaction doesn't go the way you wanted it to go, then there's absolutely no one to contact. So you're pretty much screwed. That is not somewhere you want to be. So looking at all of this, in the future, I envision a future with millions and millions of coins. And if I am trying to invest into a coin early on centralized exchanges, it's not certain that it will ever be listed. So that is something that you need to know. And if you use decentralized exchanges, then you might find someone that is selling that coin or that has acquired that coin and is willing to sell it through the P2P network. Decentralized exchanges are not a solution that fits everything. So it's not always the silver bullet. Like we mentioned, it's much, much slower, okay? And there is more security to it, but you can also be in a situation where you have no access to recover your funds because there's no customer service. The multiple versus one node sync is something that needs to be taken into consideration. On a centralized exchange, there is just one node that updates, and that is much faster, especially because their order book is off the chain. Something that I want to mention to finish this video is that, people have realized that decentralized exchanges are not quite there yet, but there is a movement towards innovation in that sector. And these are called decentralized exchange protocols. And since, they can't compete with liquidity compared to centralized exchanges, so decentralized exchanges, people have created protocols in order to be able to create a bigger pool of liquidity and make it global. Since it is a peer-to-peer network, you have access to users all around the world. So, for example, 0x kind of have this relay system where they have a relay network. So they're able to, create this communication with other people in the world where you're able to transact with them. And what that means is that actually decentralized exchanges could one day have more users than centralized exchanges. The reason being is that regulations, people. If, centralized exchanges don't comply with country-specific regulations, then they can be shut down, shut off. And this has happened in Korea, where Koreans weren't able to go on a certain exchange. Or imagine Binance, all of a sudden it becomes illegal to trade on Binance, then how many users would they lose? And that is why decentralized exchanges could be an interesting alternative. Now, I'll add in the show notes some of these protocols if you want more information. There's AirSwap, 0x, there's Kyber, and also I'll link all the links down if you're interested. If you're not into crypto yet, you're interested, there will be a Coinbase link to start up your account. There is also a hardware wallet link down there. And if you like this video, you want to see more video, please comment, give some feedback. Please, people, give feedback and smash the like button. All right, subscribe. Crypto Poppy, I'm out.